Hello everyone, welcome to another EV Ramblings video. So I've been driving electric vehicles for over 10 years now. I've owned several different ones and I've driven a lot more. But this is my most recent EV purchase. This was a 2021 Ford Mustang Mach E, which I bought used right at the beginning of August. So I've owned it for about 5 months now. And I wanted to create this video of the top 10 things you should look for or that you should know when you are shopping for a used Mustang Mach E. Now, we've finally seen used prices drop. This has been on the market for about 3 years now. So actually now is the perfect time to get into one of these vehicles. Either maybe you're driving an older EV or this is your first time purchase. This is a fantastic car, and I will be creating an owner's guide with top tips after this video. But for that, let's just get right into number one. Okay, the first tip I'm going to cover is how to identify which Mach E you're looking at. And now this is really important because the Mach E comes in many trims such as Select, California Route 1, Premium, GT, and even a Rally Edition. Now the Rally is just coming out for like the 2024 model year, so I'm not going to cover that. But being able to identify some of the features that the car that you maybe want has easily is something that's really important. Now, every Mach E on the side, it has this trim that you can see here, and it says Mach E. Now, you can actually use this as a very quick way to identify the type of vehicle you're looking at. So they'll all say Mach E, but you'll notice this one has a little 4 after the E. And the 4 signifies all-wheel drive. So if it doesn't have the 4, then it's rear-wheel drive. And then finally, you can see there's this huge black line here that terminates into an X. So that tells me that this has the extended battery pack. If there's no X on the end here, then it's the standard battery pack. Now this is really important. So if you wanted the maximum range, you'd probably want one, the Mach E without all-wheel drive, but the X on it. If you were looking for maybe the cheapest version you want, then you'd want just a Mach E, no 4, no X. But this is one thing that you could use to easily identify some of the core values of the car. Is it all-wheel drive? Does it have the big battery? Now, but there are other things that we're going to go to help identify the actual trim level of the vehicle. Okay, so I moved to the front of the vehicle, and this is actually something that I use all the time to determine what type of vehicle it's driving on the road for me. But all of the cars have this similar front end, except the Select trim, so that's the very entry level. Instead of having this glossy black here, it actually has like a slotted matte design in the plastic. So that's something that you could easily tell, okay, if it has a slotted kind of matted plastic on it, then that is the Select trim, a lower level. Now, if it has this glossy trim, then you know that's a Premium. And now, if the centerpiece right here does not match the body color, then you know that's a GT, which is the top trim, high performance area. So just by looking at the front of the vehicle, some of those basic features, that can once again tell you what type of car it is that you're looking at. So we've covered 2 things to look at for identifying the vehicle. The final one as well, though, is once again the side trim here, like these wheel wells. If they are matte plastic, so not glossy whatsoever, that's a Select trim. If they're gloss black, it's Premium. And now this is where it can be a little bit tricky. Usually, if these trim pieces are the same color as the body, so if let's say they were white, that would kind of tell you it's probably a GT trim. But there were some options throughout these earlier years where you could have those body match as an option on a lower trim level. So that's not necessarily the best way to decide. Now, there are many different wheels that you could go by. So these are the Premium wheels. They are 19-inch. Now on the Select trim, they're a little bit smaller. You can get them at 18-inch and they have a different design. And once again, the GT is even larger at 20-inch and once again, different design. But that could be a little bit harder to figure out, because I have seen several people change the wheels on the Mach E for something aftermarket. Now finally, one of the last things that you could look for identifying the trim is the presence of a glass roof. So on the Premium and up, so like that GT, you can get a full glass roof inside. And it doesn't open or anything, it's just something to look through to let some light in. So if you notice that this top trim is the same color as the body, then it's not a Premium or it's not a GT. And once again, if it's maybe just a black car, if you just go inside the car, look at some of the pictures that may be posted, if you see the glass roof, you know it's more of the higher end trim. Now, one caveat about this, and this will be more for the future for people watching this video, as of like the 2024 model year, the glass roof is an option on Premium and higher, or the Premium trim rather. So it can't be an indicator kind of moving forward, but any vehicle from here before, so like 2023 to 2021, if it has a glass roof, it's premium. So with that, let's move on to tip number 2. Okay, so this next one, tip number 2, is a little bit difficult to see, and you'll never see this on the picture, but it's about the actual battery frame rails. So I'm going to go down here and try to get you an idea of what to look at here. So, underneath the car, there's this first rail. It runs the entire length of the car on the side. That is the battery frame rail. And there's a very common problem where people or shops end up trying to jack the car up to change like the wheels on there, and they damage the rail significantly. This is a big problem, because if Ford ever needs to remove the battery pack from the car and that rail is damaged, that could be a big issue. It could push against some of the other actual frames of the car so it doesn't come out properly. It could even damage the battery. So I would actually really encourage you to kind of get down on your knees, have a look on both sides and see if there's any big dents on there. I actually, on my car, on the other side, there was a tiny dent that I noticed. It definitely didn't impact anything, but it's something that I wish I knew. And if there's something that has a serious damage on there, that might be a reason why the car is selling for a really low price. So just make sure you have a look at the battery frame rails underneath the car. Tip number 3 is about the master door code. So if that's a mystery what that means to you, Ford for years has had the ability to basically like get into the car through a code on the side. Now you're not going to be able to see it, but well, I don't think you can see it anyways, there's a lot of sun, but you have the digits 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. So you could actually, with the Mach E, with a code, if you, let's say your key, you lose it, or the battery dies, you could actually punch in a code that you'd set, and you could actually even start the car with that code. So it's really handy to have that, really important. And for myself, like I mountain bike a lot, and I kind of always have the concern that, hey, maybe I damaged my key in my backpack or something along those lines. But one thing that to know, if you're buying used, it's a possibility you won't know what that code is. So if you're buying from a Ford dealership, they could find out what that factory code is. But if you didn't buy from a Ford dealership and the previous owner didn't tell them that information, they won't have it at all. And you will have to actually schedule a service with a Ford dealership. They require to have the car on hand. They have to do a bunch of checks to make sure that this is a real request. Obviously, they don't want to give a master code just to anybody, and they will charge you for it. So it's something, usually it's around, well, it should be less than $100, but that's like $100. And if you are buying this used and you know that there is no code available from whoever's selling it, that is definitely something that you can negotiate a lower price. So the master door code, have a look for it in the glove box, see if it's written in the Ford manual or if there's a sticker somewhere in there, and test it out. If it is there, if it works, great. If it doesn't, once again, try to get that lower price. Okay, tip number 4, and this is kind of just a conversation topic, but something that's important to understand. And there's 4 letters, HVJB, which means high voltage junction box. So if you happen to join a bunch of Facebook groups or internet forums or Reddit or whatever it is about this car, you're going to see lots of posts and comments about HVJB. And this is actually something that is actually quite important with the Mach E, and it's probably the biggest black eye the car has, is that inside that big battery pack, which I talked about in the frame rails in tip number 2, there's a high voltage junction box which manages the flow of current. And the first design of this junction box actually had some serious flaws in that if you accelerate a lot over several times or happen to rapid charge and accelerate really fast, it's possible that some of the contacts in that junction box can fuse together and essentially make the car inoperable. And it is a fairly involved job. It's not impossible. They do it when it happens, where they have to drop the entire battery pack, take it apart, replace this piece. Now, this is covered under the 8-year warranty, but obviously something that you don't want to have happen. Now, Ford in Canada and USA has issued a recall for the 2021-2022 cars, well, some of the 2022 cars, specifically the all-wheel drive and extended battery pack versions of the car, where they're going to replace this junction box with a brand new version that they're actually designing. So my car has the original junction box in it, and I have to wait for them to release this new part. And the hope is that this new part will completely fix this issue, because cars with the second version of this, so that started later in the 2022 model year, I believe July, some of them have still had the issue. And it definitely isn't confined just to like the all-wheel drive, premium, bigger battery pack cars. It's kind of happened across the board. So this is just something for you to be aware of. First off, like if it's part of the recall or not, like I would say at this point it's actually better to be part of that recall that's out right now, so the earlier model years, just so you know you can get the latest part. But also, like, there's a lot of discussion that this will probably just go into the newer models, or if you happen to have the failure, then you're just going to get replaced with the newest version of this part. Anyways, though, this is just really something I wanted to talk about, explain, really important that you know. So with that, let's go on to the next tip. We're halfway through on tip number 5, and this feeds on what I was just talking about with the high voltage junction box, but this is about the warranty of the car. So clearly, if you're buying used, you're going to want to know what kind of warranty it has. Now, with pretty much every EV on the planet right now, at least in North America, they all have like an 8-year warranty on like the battery and the primary electronics of the car, and because they assume that would be the primary concern for most people, which it is, I would say. But they do have, like on this car at least, in Canada, a 3-year bumper-to-bumper warranty that goes up to 60,000 kilometers. Now, when I bought this car, so it's 2021, and the warranty officially expires in February of 2024. So I'm not there yet, but my car had 70,000 kilometers on it, so it was actually out of that warranty. And immediately, one of the little rear tail side marker lights was just stopped working. I actually didn't notice it when it was at the dealership, and that was an $80 part. So just kind of be aware of what kind of warranty is remaining. I would encourage you, like something like this premium model, it has a lot of electronics and features, and some of these things like these headlights on it with the little scrolling turn signal, that headlight to replace it is over $1,000. So there's a lot of expensive pieces. So really, if you are there on the market, test everything out. Like turn the lights on, make sure they're all working, make sure all the turn signals work, make sure all the doors open properly, all the other power features are there and functional. If there is some kind of like defect or there's an issue with one of them and the car is out of warranty, you're going to want to ask for a discount. And if it's within warranty, you're going to make sure you get that taken care of right away. So this will be half the decision you want to make, whether you want to buy maybe a newer used model like a 2022 or even a 2023 to get that larger warranty, or if you maybe want to consider an extended warranty. I would be cautious with extended warranties. Some of them, they don't really understand an electric vehicle, and so I wouldn't really trust them to cover the EV side of the car, but I would trust them to cover all the other parts, which are just the same as any other vehicle, and so it could be a good investment there. Okay, tip number 6, and we're back to the front of the car. And this is something that I have seen on many Mach E's, and unfortunately I see it on mine, but it's paint chips. Now, the front of this car, I really love the styling. It has some really cool features like electronic shutter that opens and closes based on what kind of cooling it needs. But it's actually quite a flat front. And right here I have a couple of big chips, and there's a bunch of them you can't see, but like right here, there. Some on this side, there, are all rock chips, which is a real pain in the butt to try to fix. It's actually be quite expensive. And beyond that, something I didn't notice when I drove my car is the windshield. It's pot marked with small, like almost sandblasted type of like the chips. And they're not something that can be fixed. I looked into it. I thought maybe I can. I would actually have to replace the entire windshield. And it really shows up when the sun's directly shining on it. You can see all this tiny little diffraction of light. Now, this seems to just be kind of an inherent design flaw with the car, that it gets a lot of these. Now, the windshield, I have seen some people who had a similar situation with mine. I'm pretty sure the previous owner of this car drove it on a gravel road fairly regularly, or at least they drove really close behind big trucks or something during like the winter, and a bunch of sand and grit got thrown up on it. But a lot of owners invest in like a clear coat type finish, like a PPF. Now, ceramic will not fix this whatsoever. So if it has a ceramic coating, that's not going to stop it. That doesn't really harden or protect your paint in that way. You need to get like a clear PPF or even like maybe a vinyl cover. So that might be something to look for, though. If someone's already done that, that could be really expensive. It could be several $1,000s to get the PPF on the front of the car. And if someone's already paid for that, that's awesome. That's a great deal. And now that might not bother you, these little like nicks and stuff. They're not really going to lead to any long-term problems. Well, I guess potentially it could. It's gone through the clear coat, so I guess that could creep later on several years from now. I tried to negotiate a lower price, which I did get it because of that. I do kind of have a little regrets myself. I really like how my car looks. I want them to be as pristine as possible, and this definitely takes away from that. And so long term, I will be looking to get this fixed. But that's just something to really know with the Mach E, is that a lot of pictures that you're going to get from dealerships aren't going to show you those. You really want to go see it in person, have a strong look at it. And as mentioned, like even like my little side pillars here, they have rock chips as well. So really have a great look at the front of the car. Also look at maybe someone did a really poor job painting it to fix it or something. But that's an area that you definitely want to look at to make sure to see what condition it is and if it has like the PPF protection film or not. We've moved back to the car for tip number 7, and this is one that I find quite amusing actually. So as I mentioned, this is a 2021 premium trim, and I'm going to open the trunk, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kick my foot, and look at that. It opens. Now, in terms of it actually closing, is a little bit more hit or miss. We'll see if it actually works or not. Hey, it worked that time. But, you know, that's a feature that's available in a lot of cars, and this has a power trunk, so why wouldn't it be there? So, when this car came out, we were kind of knee-deep in the global pandemic, supply chain issue, microchip problem, shortages. And so for 2022, and even up until now, years of this car, that feature isn't here. So there's some missing features. And this is a feature that I actually use all the time, the kick to open. Like I usually have my arms filled with stuff, like be it groceries or mountain bike stuff or whatever, like some large thing. That is a game changer for me. Now, luckily there are a few aftermarket companies that have, you could purchase from it so you can get that working again. But there's one inside the car, which we'll see. I might create a video to demonstrate how it works. But self-parking. This car came with self-parking, and there's right above the shifter, or the drive selector rather, there's a button that you could push, and it engages self-parking. So you can drive along, tell it, hey, go into this spot, and it'll actually go and do it. And I've tested it, it works really well. Once again, that was removed from 2022 on. The button's still there, and if you push it into 2022 or 2023 or even 2024, it'll come up with basically parking spots in your map saying, hey, this is where the parking is. So, and that you cannot add this feature after the fact. So if you really want the self-parking to like impress your friends or something, then you're looking at 2021 only for the Mach E. Personally, I don't use it. I prefer to park my own cars, and I have read on some forums that it can be a little bit dicey. Like you definitely want to nanny it a lot just to make sure it's not going to smash into another car. So Ford might have had another reason besides like the global chip shortage for removing that feature. But anyways, those are the two missing features that are only available in the first year of the Mach E. So for tip number 8, we've moved into the trunk of the car. I've already started lifting it up. But this is the aftermarket Ford option to have a little rubber on it, otherwise it's carpeted. But back here, there's some really important things. And you want to make sure that the car has these, or at least you negotiate a lower price. So there's no spare tire on pretty much every EV with the exception of a few of them. But the ones that don't have spares have a tire inflator kit. So this kit has some kind of fluid that gets pumped into it that tries to fill any like punctures or holes, and it's also an air compressor. And now these have a limited life span time on them, but they still should be good for several years. So you want to make sure the car has that, but you also want to make sure it has this. And I'm not going to bother, well actually sure, let's do it. Let's open it. This is the Ford charger. And so this is a pretty cool unit. It comes with a little adapter. This is for a regular like 110 wall outlet. Just plugs into the top, bang, and then you plug into your car. This one hasn't been used yet, but it has a higher amperage, level 2 type plug as well. So this lets you go 30 amp, 250 volt. So if you happen to have the plug for this, you could plug level 2. So if you don't own an EV, yet, you're going to want a charger to come with it, and you're definitely going to want a portable one, which this one is. Now, as of 2023, this is not an option that comes with the car. You actually have to buy it extra. There are several aftermarket ones available that you can purchase. This one happens to fit nicely in this little cubby down here, which I appreciate. But I have purchased a few used EVs in my time, and a lot of times they don't come with a charger. They just disappear, and I'm not sure if it's because the dealership is just taking it out and selling it or using it for something else separately, or if the previous owners of the cars decide to keep it. But you always want to look in the back to see if it's there. Now, if it's not in the back, you're going to want to check out the front trunk as well, just in case someone threw it there. But if there's no charger, just try to maybe negotiate once again a lower price, or assume you're going to have to spend for a level 1 charger anywhere from $300 to $500 just to get one. Okay, we're at tip number 9, and I'm going to be honest, I've re-recorded this so many times because I get way too rambly during this, and I guess I'm passionate about it. But this is about subscription services, and that might be a new concept for you, but basically you have to pay for something either monthly or yearly to use it. And this is showing up more and more in vehicles, and also it is definitely showing up in EVs because the manufacturer isn't making as much money on like replacement parts or things along those lines, so they are definitely pushing subscription services more. So it is December 31st, 2023 right now while I'm recording this, so happy New Year's Eve, everybody. But my Blue Cruise subscription that came with this car is set to expire today. And this is basically the hands-free driving. And now, the way Blue Cruise works, it only works on roads that are mapped by Ford. So I do understand that there's active work on Ford's behalf to make the system work. And there's safety reasons, so I understand why they have to charge for it. But it is very expensive. And Vancouver Island, where I live, like there's only a really short section of road where it's actually usable, and I have to drive like 3 hours to get to that road. So I'm not renewing it myself. But I got like an offer of 3-year service for $750 Canadian dollars, and I know a lot of people in my same situation in the US are getting offers for $600 US. So you'd have to decide whether that's worth it for you or not. For me, it's not in any way, but I was looking at their monthly fee, and in Canada they want to charge $100 a month if I don't buy this, which absolutely hell no am I doing that. But this is something that, well, if you buy one of the older Mach E's, you might be presented with, whereas if you buy a newer one, and let's say that feature is really important to you, you might be able to get a couple of years free service. Now, there's nothing said Ford won't just offer more offers down the road or make it free again, but there's several things that this has to subscribe to. Now, one of the really important subscription services is navigation. So, navigation in this car, and this will be on my owner's tip video as well. If you want to pre-warm the battery to get the fastest charging speeds, especially in winter on this car, you have to use the built-in Ford navigation system. You have to put the fast charger as your destination, and about 16 kilometers out from that destination, it'll start heating the battery. And I have seen people who haven't heated, and I've heated mine, and it's really double the rapid charge speed. So it's a crucial feature if you're going to use this car for longer distance driving in colder climates. And so I know that my navigation's set to expire, I think it's in about 4 months, and I'm going to be buying that for sure. But these are costs that you probably maybe haven't experienced with previous vehicles, which you need to consider. And once again, like if you're purchasing 2021, it's a high possibility that these have all expired. Now, I know with my General Motors cars in the past, like with OnStar, if you're a new owner, they might give you like a 3-month trial. So that's a possibility when you get that car, but just know that that's something, an additional cost that could be built into the ownership of the vehicle, and definitely the year of the car and whether that subscription is active or not can be an influence on that. Here we are, tip number 10. I moved inside the car, and yeah, here's this glass roof I was talking about earlier. So this is about the software versions in the car. So I just talked about subscription services, but one of the key things about the Ford Mach E was it was really their first real over-the-air update car where Ford could push updates to the vehicle. And they have done lots of things to change how this big center console entertainment system works, which some big quality of life. Now, when I bought my car, it was severely out of date in terms of software version. and I kind of wish I knew how to check to see what was in it. There's lots of stories online of people who have had issues getting it to update, and worst case scenario, you kind of have to go to a dealership and ask them to update it. But if you're in an area of the world that where your dealership isn't familiar with this car, there could be struggles then as well. But there's a couple things that I suggest for you to look. So if you click on the little settings button, now those buttons and this menu has changed. If you have an older version, this might necessarily not work for you. But there should be a software update somewhere in settings. And on this case, on my version, it's on the left here. So once you're in the software settings, it'll do a check. And now this shows Ford PowerUp 6.3.0. And this tells me what the recent update did. Now that right there is quite a new version. But there's some people who are still in like version 3, there's version 4, and there's also a Sense version, like this whole system. So if you go to General here, and you go to About Sync, it'll give you the Sync software version as well here. So this is a little bit less usable, but you could do some Google searches, some internet searches for the software version that you have. But really, yeah, like the software update, see what version it is there. And the updates, you can't just force it like a computer. So Ford has to push it to you, and your car has to have a really good, strong cell signal. You also need to go into the Ford Pass app. So there is an app you need to purchase with this car, and you have to go in and choose a schedule that you would like to set. Now, you can do that here. See, there's a recurring schedule. So I prefer to make sure that the Ford Pass app is set up, though, until you get notification when an update is done. But essentially, forcing it to say, hey, anytime at 1 a.m., making sure you have a good cell signal, and it should start downloading updates then. But you might find that the car will wait like a week or 2 weeks between updates, and it will want a longer drive. So after an update's done, go out for kind of a long drive, come back, and hopefully it keeps updating it. But yeah, that's basically the last tip, is to understand that there's going to be features and updates with the car that are going to improve the quality of life, and your car might not have it on the used market. It's very possible that someone didn't turn on automatic updates, and your car's sitting on a really old version, and you get into it, you're like, oh, this isn't a really good experience. Just know that it can be improved considerably through these updates, and yeah, that's how you get it going. All right, that's the end of the top 10 tips that I have, but I do have one final bonus tip to give you. Now, my first tip was talking about identifying which Mach E you're looking at, and there is another really important reason to making sure you do this. One of the reasons you might be buying this car is because it is a ton of fun to drive, and part of that fun comes from the power that it has. Now, just because the Mach E has all-wheel drive between the Select trim and the Premium trim, that doesn't mean they're the same car. The Premium actually has much bigger electrical motors in it. So where the Select all-wheel drive will go 0 to 60 in the mid 6 seconds, this one will do it under 5, which is quite a big difference. So that's really something to look for. And I would encourage you, if you've only ever driven like a Select Mach E before, definitely try to go and test drive like a Premium or even the GT, just to get a feel for how different they drive, because there is a real difference. And another thing I didn't talk about for the GT trim, there's 2 GT trims. There's GT and GT PE, Performance Edition. The Performance Edition, essentially, it's not really that much faster, but it does have different front seats, and it also has the mag ride suspension. One of the top complaints about this car, I would say, is the ride quality. I particularly like it. I really enjoy how it drives, but some people find that it's really bouncy on rough roads. I've always driven cars that kind of have harder suspension, so it's no problem for me. The mag ride gets rid of this, so if that's a concern for you and you want high performance, you really might want to look for the GT Performance Edition. So thanks for watching. Look for, once again, an owner's tip video coming out soon, where I'll talk about a lot of things that you should know once you buy one of these cars. I wasn't going to do it, but you know what? Let's test out this self-parking. I've only ever done it once. So I'm going to stop the car. I'm going to hit parking button. Now I get the option navigate to parking or parking assistance. So if it's a 2022 or newer, once again, no parking assistance will be there. I'm going to do it yes. I'm going to choose the type of parking. So it's like this, row of cars that way. Now it's going to say scanning. I got to turn my turn signal on now because there's some spots coming up. It's looking. Did it find a spot? All right, so release steering wheel, shift to neutral, release brake, hold park button. Okay, I have to hold it down. Oh, that's damn close. This is freaky. All right, I had to just stop it. But you know what? All things considered, it did a pretty good job. So yeah, that's self-parking. And once again, only available in the 2021 year. You're going to have to decide if you really want that or not. So thanks for watching, everyone. See you in a later video.